The conversation continues with Greg Jefferson, business editor of the San Antonio Express-News, and Brendan Gibbons, environmental reporter for the Rivard Report. Greg, you're working on some interesting insight into the San Antonio economy moving into 2019. And we're showing a little chink in the armor, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. I'm working on a story for the weekend on job growth in San Antonio in 2018. According to statistics from the Dallas Fed, our growth rate for jobs was 1%. That's not even keeping up with the pace of our population growth. And that's no way to grow a city. I mean, you want those two percentages to be closer. We're also trailing pretty significantly Austin, Houston, and Dallas.
Why is that?
Well, I mean, we have a more balanced economy, for one thing. Houston, for example, their job growth rate was 3.4. That's largely tied to the rebound in oil prices you saw in 2018. I mean, that changed obviously in the fall with the decline of oil. But I mean, they spent 3/4 of the year in pretty good territory. There was a lot more oil, or there was a lot more drilling activity than there had been. So that always means good things for the Houston environment or economy. With Austin, we've just got a mad tech sector right now, and they've been getting all kinds of economic development wins with relocations, and also their own kind of organic job creation among IT companies. So,
and Dallas has been a real center for major corporate relocations in the past year.
Right. Yeah, and San Antonio. I was speaking with Jennifer Sauceda Herrera, who's the CEO of the San Antonio Economic Development Foundation, yesterday. And she told me that her team was working on probably about 100 different projects, which is normal for them. Those are relocation. Those are in various stages of completion, either just speculative, whether a company will move here or not, to negotiations for actually bringing folks along. She said that there were 5 cases where a company got very close to choosing San Antonio and opted not to, not because of competition with other cities, but simply because of uncertainty over trade policy under the Trump administration and the trade war with China that we've entered into. These are having real world impacts. And these companies, they opted to just shelve their relocations. It's not like they moved to Austin or Houston or wherever. They just said, okay, we're going to stay where we are until we know where the economy is headed.
And Brandon, obviously we've been talking a lot lately about the city's global warming plan and the very, very aggressive plan it has to deal with those issues. How are we doing so far? I mean, it seems like CPS Energy is a leader in alternative fuels, in environmental stewardship. It seems like we're in pretty good shape already.
In Texas, it certainly is. And as we were talking earlier, most of this has been driven by their own decisions and not any requirements from the state or federal government. Parts of the plan that are really uncontroversial too so far are ideas how to cope with climate change. So San Antonio water system diversifying its water sources and focusing on conservation, like not just relying so much on the Edwards Aquifer, does make the city more resilient against droughts. And recently, the municipal government's been interested in adopting higher engineering standards for flood control devices, and that's based on a new statistical analysis by the federal government of all the rainstorms in Texas over several decades. And it's shown that these rainstorms are getting heavier. When they looked at like the average of all of them, the heaviest storms are getting heavier. So that means that new drainage projects will be designed to meet a slightly higher standard to be prepared for a heavier storm. So these are examples of things that are going on just kind of routinely where the actual causes and effects of the warming that we're seeing right now are being incorporated into local government decisions.
I'd like to ask both of you to wrap up today. We're talking about going oil-free by 2050. this is Texas, after all. This is a state where oil continues to be a major industry, especially with the Eagle Ford here. What are the political ramifications of even trying to make an attempt like that over a rather brief period of 31 years?
Well, part of it is market driven. And that's, when we talk about the climate action plan, I mean, I think what gets left out is that, I mean, look, coal is not doing well. I mean, no matter what the Trump administration says, and what it tries to do in the way of reviving it, it's not going to happen. We've got clean energy coming on strong. I mean, it's becoming more costly to generate and transfer power generated from wind and solar. To the extent that that happens, it's going to put more pressure on coal. So, in Texas last year, we had what, four coal plant
total
closures?
coal plants,
Right,
three
yeah.
driven by a for-profit
These are
company.
closures. Yeah, exactly. A for-profit company, and that tells you. I mean, if there's money to be made, a for-profit, corporation is going to make it. I mean, regardless of the environmental impact.
So, Brendan, do you think there are market-driven strategies toward achieving this climate change plan?
A lot of the success in Texas has been driven by that so far. Texas is the #1 state for wind power, and that has been completely driven by the market. Yeah. There are days when there is so much wind power on the state grid that electricity prices drop to almost zero. They're just that productive. I recently covered a Rice University study where they looked at where the sun shines and when it shines and where the wind blows and when it blows across this huge state. And it's pretty rare that there's not some time during the day or night that there's not wind blowing or sun shining somewhere generating power. And because Texas has its own isolated electrical grid, that's a big opportunity for us. And Jim, we'll be talking about all of these issues at a forum that we're hosting with Mayor Ron Nirenberg, representative from CPS Energy, people from the environmental community and the solar energy industry on February 27th at Weathered Souls Brewery. It's a free event from 6 to 8 p.m. that evening, and invite listeners to come out and check that out.
Wonderful,
live.
I appreciate that. I also like the sound of electricity prices falling to near nothing. That sounds good, too. Greg Jefferson is the business editor of the San Antonio Express News. Brendan Gibbons, environmental reporter for the Rivard Report. Thank you for joining us today on The Conversation Continues.